think for far too long in this country, millions of people felt as though they weren't represented at all by the establishment media.
GBNews was needed because there literally was no other voice. Everyone was saying the same thing.
GBNews exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GBNews came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
But journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
Charlie Peters, he gave a voice to the victims of grooming gangs, and now, of course, it's led to a national inquiry.
GBNews exists to make sure those concerns are put forward and people feel as though what they want to ask is put to those in power.
We don't take orders from anyone. We ask the questions our viewers and listeners want answering.
I know what's actually being discussed by my family and my friends.
Us ordinary, hard-working British people have had enough. We've had enough.
They're fed up with the same old establishment nonsense. Everything that we do is opening up conversations that others are afraid to go at.
Why are you illegally bringing people into Britain?
That is our job. Our job is to get to the truth.
If it's important to you watching or listening at home, then it's important to us as well.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
Last night we reached a momentous breakthrough in the Middle East, something that people said was never going to be done.
2 years of war, Israel and Hamas have agreed to the first phase of a peace deal led by Donald Trump. Through power, pragmatism and diplomacy, President Trump's Middle East strategy has delivered a path to peace that many thought impossible. Plus,
stamp duty ECHR, tax on education, ban doctors from going on strike.
Are the Tories back in the race? Kemi Badenoch announced she would abolish stamp duty on primary homes, a return to low-tax, pro-business conservatism. After the worst election defeat in history, could this be the moment the Tory party starts to rebuild and the right finally unites? Also tonight, another week, another scandal for Sir Keir Starmer. But is this the one that could sink his government? 2 former cabinet secretaries have now publicly accused the Prime Minister of putting sucking up to China at Britain's security. Can the Prime Minister be trusted to keep the country safe? And is Britain heading for an AI-centred economic doomsday? The Bank of England warns the surge in artificial intelligence stocks could mirror the dot-com crash of the early 2000s, and optimism is starting to suffer. Should we be worried, or is this just the price of progress? State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my formidably forthright panel, the historian author Dr. Tessa Dunlop and the journalist and broadcaster Linda Duberly. As always, I want to know your views. mailmog@gbnews.com. But now it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Tatiana Sanchez.
Jacob, thank you. The top stories. A senior Hamas chief has declared an end to the Israeli war and claims the start of a permanent ceasefire. It comes as key Israeli figures meet to sign off the deal. Donald Trump hailed a momentous breakthrough in the Middle East and says Gaza will be redone. The US president added all 20 surviving captives will be home by Monday or Tuesday. He told his cabinet, "We're going to go to Egypt for an additional signing." He explained the agreement has already been signed, but this will be an official signing. Israel and Hamas agreed to phase 1 of his Gaza peace deal earlier today to see all Israeli hostages and close to 2,000 Palestinian prisoners released, humanitarian aid enter Gaza, and Israeli forces pull back to agreed lines. The US leader also says Iran wants to work on peace.
Last night we reached a momentous breakthrough in the Middle East, something that people said was never going to be done. We ended the war in Gaza and really, on a much bigger basis, created peace. And I think it's going to be a lasting peace, hopefully an everlasting peace. Peace in the Middle East. We secured the release of all of the remaining hostages, and they should be released on Monday or Tuesday. Getting them is a complicated process. I'd rather not tell you what they have to do to get them. There are places you don't want to be, but we are getting the hostages back on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday.
The Prime Minister thanked the US President for his role in the plan to end the fighting in Gaza. Sir Keir Starmer praised the tireless diplomatic efforts of the US, Egypt, Qatar and Turkey moving towards peace. He says the first phase of a Gaza peace plan would not have happened without Donald Trump's leadership. Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper has also spoken this evening.
After 2 years of devastating suffering, the tens of thousands of lives lost, of the hostages and the pain for hostages' families, the hostages being held, and of course the humanitarian crisis. So now to have this agreement on the ceasefire, on President Trump's peace initiative is so incredibly important. And today in Paris, we've had different nations coming together to show our strong support for President Trump's initiative.
In other news, 19 migrants have been sent to France on 2 flights as part of the government's returns deal with France. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood says flights across the Channel were underway and ramping up, sending migrants trying to cross into the UK by small boat a message that if you come here illegally, you face being detained and removed, so think twice before making that journey. The 19 returns, including a flight earlier today, followed 7 deportations last month. Further flights to France under this pilot scheme are scheduled to take place over the coming days and weeks. And Sir Keir Starmer has been given a bold welcome in India, with streets in Mumbai lined with thousands of photos of him and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. On his first visit to the country, he's led a record delegation of more than 100 UK business, university and cultural leaders on a 2-day trade mission. The Prime Minister said the UK-India partnership could boost Britain's economy by nearly £5 billion a year. And speaking on digital IDs whilst he was there, Sir Keir Starmer told GBNews in his speech today that they're now about accessing your own money. Those are the latest headlines. For now, it's back to Jacob.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. After 2 years of brutal conflict, Israel and Hamas have agreed to the first phase of a peace plan, and United States President Donald Trump is at the centre.
Tonight we reached a momentous breakthrough in the Middle East, something that people said was never going to be done. We ended the war in Gaza and really, on a much bigger basis, created peace. And I think it's going to be a lasting peace, hopefully an everlasting peace. Peace in the Middle East. We secured the release of all of the remaining hostages, and they should be released on Monday or Tuesday.
In an historic development, moments ago, Gaza's Hamas chief declared an end to the war and the start of a permanent ceasefire after the group received guarantees from mediators and the United States administration confirming that the war has completely ended. President Trump has reshaped diplomacy in the Middle East through a mix of power, pragmatism and diplomacy. What does this peace entail? This is phase 1. Hamas will release 20 hostages. Israel will withdraw troops to an agreed line and free around 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. There will be a ceasefire, an apolitical international oversight committee, and the resumption of aid into Gaza, steps that reflect Donald Trump's peace framework in September. Many believe this to be unachievable. President Trump has been consistent in his support for the State of Israel, but unafraid to challenge Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu when necessary. He has backed Israel's security without exempting it from accountability. President Trump has approached foreign policy with the aim of getting results, not pleasing bureaucrats of the United Nations. His willingness to bomb Iran earlier in his second presidency sent a message that he was serious about tackling threats from adversaries, and they listened. This credibility gives him an ability to use power effectively, something that has eluded his recent predecessors. President Trump recognized a difficult but incontrovertible truth. Palestinian terrorists cannot govern Gaza or the West Bank without the tacit backing of surrounding powers. So instead of isolating them, he built alliances with Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, countries that now quietly support stability in Gaza. It is these relationships that made today's deal possible. President Trump recognized an advantage. He didn't allow himself to be beholden to green energy lobbies. His willingness to sell and drill for oil strengthened ties with Arab nations that are dependent on oil in a way those beholden to net zero could not. This deal reflects Trump's belief that peace comes through strength and leadership. He has shown again that American power and realpolitik can determine the direction of history. As Trump himself has said, this agreement could usher in a different world. And it's time the rest of the world listened. As always, let me know what you think, mailmog@gbnews.com. But I'm joined now by United States Representative for Virginia's 9th District, Morgan Griffith. Congressman, thank you very much for joining me. This is a great success for Donald Trump, isn't it? He's done something that people really felt he wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah, most people thought he could not accomplish this, but he always goes out and looks for the big picture, for the grand deal. And, you know, if you don't try, you fail. And so he's been making these efforts, and most of the time it works out well. Sometimes it doesn't. But in this case in Gaza, it has worked out very well to bring peace to that area. I hope it will be an everlasting peace, but even peace for a number of years is more than what we've seen in the last couple of years. And so it's a welcome relief, and I'm glad that this issue has been resolved. And I'm glad that President Trump was able to lead, and you're absolutely right. It's all about exerting American power in the right ways, and President Trump does that better than anybody has done in decades.
And part of this is persuading Benjamin Netanyahu to change tack. It hasn't just been putting pressure on the Arab states, has it? It's also been putting pressure on the state of Israel to compromise.
That is correct. He's been working with a number of the Arab states in the vicinity, but he's also pushed the Israeli government. And, you know, in the first few months after the invasion of October 7 by Hamas into Israeli territory, killing civilians, there was no way that that you could put that pressure on Israel. But after 2 years of war, it was clear that it was time to put that pressure on, and President Trump exerted just the right amount of pressure to get a deal done. That's what leadership is about, and he's shown it very much.
And he showed it also with the treatment of Iran and the ability to disrupt Iran's nuclear program. So the Arab states know that when he says he might do something, he means business, I wouldn't say he speaks softly and carries a big stick, because he speaks loudly and carries a big stick, but he's basically following the Teddy Roosevelt approach.
That is correct. And when he bombed Iran, it showed that, you know, you can't just say things without following up on it. He followed up. Some of the previous presidents would say things, but they didn't follow up. So a lot of the leaders around the world, and in the Middle East in particular, it really didn't pay any attention to what was being said.
And how does this play in terms of American politics? Obviously, you have elections every 2 years. It's now only 1 year from the midterms. Does the American public focus on foreign affairs, or is this, from his domestic political point of view, a secondary issue?
Well, it certainly helps. You know, a number of Americans do pay attention to foreign affairs, particularly to what's happening in Israel. But I would have to say that the domestic issues will probably be preeminent next year. But, you know, all of this helps to contribute to his reputation as a leader who gets things done. And so this will buy him some more time on the domestic front, I believe.
And it shows him to be a deal maker. And I suppose the next question is, what can he do now about Ukraine and Russia? Because that's the one war that he thought he could solve most quickly, but as yet shows no sign of coming to an end.
Yeah, the problem is that you've got to have Russia that wants to reach a resolution right now. Putin has no desire, in my opinion, to reach that resolution. How we bring Putin to the table is the question that the president's going to have to figure out. But, you know, we are dealing with a nuclear power, that it has a lot of troops. Unfortunately for them, they haven't been able to exert that power in an effective way in Ukraine. A lot of credit has to be given to the Ukrainian soldiers and to their innovative techniques that they've used drone warfare in a way never before imagined. And while the Russians are trying to counter that, the Ukrainians have really done a number on the Russian military, and so they're now conscripting soldiers, and it'll be interesting to see. But I would hope that sometime in the future that there will be some window open that Trump can use to bring peace in that region as well.
All right. Well, Congressman, thank you so much for interrupting your day to join us. I'm very grateful. I'm now joined by the Telegraph columnist and author of Never Again, How the West Betrayed the Jews and Itself, Jake Wallace-Simmons, and my panel, the historian and author, Dr. Tessa Dunlop, and the journalist and broadcaster, Linda Doobly. Jake, thank you very much for coming in. Your Telegraph piece was, I thought, prudently cautious today. Following the Hamas statement, are you a little bit more optimistic?
I'm certainly optimistic that the war will end. It looks like the war will end, and end with, I think it has to be said, with a victory for Israel, as it should be. Let's not forget how this war started. Let's not forget who the jihadis are and in which the liberal democracy is. But I'm not altogether confident that there'll be peace in Gaza for the Palestinians anytime soon. And this is because of internal Palestinian problems. Let's not forget Hamas booted out the Palestinian Authority after Israel gave Gaza back to the Palestinians back in 2007. That was a very bloody example of internecine warfare. Hamas doesn't want to give up the hold it has on Palestinian society. It doesn't want to disarm, and it will want to settle some scores with some of the clans that have challenged its authority in Gaza over the last couple of years.
But Hamas fighters are being given free passage, aren't they? Safe conduct out of Gaza. So do you think most of them will take that, or that quite a few will stay behind?
I think that it's difficult to define who is a Hamas fighter. They often wear civilian clothes. There's a whole spectrum of involvement with the group, from 15-year-olds who've been recruited at the last minute and given a Kalashnikov, all the way through to the few hardened military commanders that they have left after 2 years of onslaught. Some of them will tactically and strategically take the free passage out of Gaza. Others will choose to remain to work underground, and others will sort of fade back into the undergrowth, but then re-emerge when the opportunity arises.
And the international apolitical administration of Gaza, how do you expect that to work?
Another massive question. I think it's important to emphasise this is phase one. And phase one, from the point of view of Israel and the international community, is the important one because we get the hostages back and the war over. After that, we're talking about phase 2, 3, and however many there are. And that's about who's going to govern Gaza, how to stop Hamas from getting control over society again, rearming and so on and so forth. But finding the technocratic, supposedly technocratic administration to oversee Gaza in itself is going to be difficult, because in the Palestinian society, you're either affiliated with Hamas broadly, or another jihadi group, or with the corrupt and brutal and inept Palestinian Authority, which has also been incentivising terror with cash handouts. There isn't anybody else to choose from. So where they're going to magic these technocrats from, I don't know. That's for Donald Trump to worry about.
But in terms of Israel, you say that it's won, but it lost the propaganda war over the last 2 years, which I think was great tragedy. This helps it to win the propaganda war as well, because it's so important, in my view, that a democratic state has the support of the wider world. And if you see how people have been behaving in this country and in the United States, Israel has lost a lot of sympathy. Do you think this peace plan will help Israel win back the sympathy that it deserves?
I'm hugely positive in the medium and longer term with regard to Israel. Hamas fought an extraordinary propaganda war. That was the war they were fighting. They weren't ever really fighting the shooting war. They wanted to win hearts and minds around the world, to put pressure on Israel to stop before it won. They succeeded, almost, but they certainly succeeded in turning hearts and minds around the world against the liberal democracy, counterintuitively. A lot of people in Britain and the West now believe what Hamas wants us to believe, that Israel's a problem, not jihadism. Now, I think I'm optimistic because we've got an election in Israel coming up at least next year, if not before. This could be a wholesale political change. There's a lot of love for Israel, I think, that may come back when that political change, if and when it happens. And Israel is, in my view, the democracy of the future. It's got a very promising demographic picture. It's got a booming economy. Strong defence, hasn't been this strong since 1967. It's got a coherent society that knows who it is, that feels like a family. And is one of the happiest countries in the world. It's number 8 now after 2 years of war. We're number 24. So I think that it's compared to ourselves, our economy, our demographics, our defence and all the rest of it, we need to be more like Israel, I think.
Well, it was being so cheerful that keeps us going in this country. But Tessa, this is remarkable, isn't it? It's a remarkable achievement for Donald Trump, who I know you haven't historically been the greatest fan.
No, it's interesting, though, listening to you talk in the round there. You started off with your monologue, placing all the glory in Trump's lap. But actually what seeped out in that conversation were key changes were afoot. For example, Israel has lost the propaganda war, increasingly isolated. That meant that Benjamin Netanyahu, ever more, dependent on the American nipple, and actually made then a few, I think, strategic errors, such as the Qatar bombing. But plus, he's entering an election year. Within 12 months, there's going to be an election. So what previously held him to the hard right in hoc with Ben Gvir, Smotriches, they no longer really count because he's going to have to go to the polls soon anyway. And therefore, I think there were these changes which meant it was easier for Trump. But ultimately, the fact that Trump could enforce this ceasefire speaks to why the protests became louder and louder. If I went and protested every day for Ukraine, nothing would change in Ukraine. But actually, if you see vast swathes of democratic populations out on the streets, that turns politicians' heads, that then put pressure on Trump, and Trump then puts pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu.
Linda.
I think you're underestimating the role that Trump played in all of this. I mean, he's not always my favourite person, but the fact of the matter is he knows how to drive a hard deal over the line. Now, and that's very different to a diplomatic negotiation. It's very different to the way a politician would behave. And he has been extremely forceful in pushing it this far. Now, you're right to raise the subject of the attack on Qatar. I think that may have pushed him to a much harder position with Israel, which is what has happened. And, I've spoken to several military strategists, one former head of comms at NATO, who has said that, the only person that could solve the Israeli situation, that could bring Israel forward like this, was America. It wasn't going to happen any other way. And I think right there in the US, it's Trump who's driving the bus.
All right. Well, thank you very much to Jake and indeed to my panel. Coming up in a moment.
Stamp duty, ECHR, tax on education, ban doctors from going on strike.
Are the Tories back in the race? Kemi Badenoch announced she would abolish stamp duty on primary homes. So, after the worst election defeat in its history, could this be the moment the Tory party begins to rebuild?
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
So, it is really, really tough, but it's also tough for people who are blind, people who are like pushing buggies, wheelchair users. I mean, my late father was a wheelchair user, and, back in the day, we'd have to sort of get him off the road, and then we'd be in the road, and then we'd have to get him back up onto the pavement again. And that's a big price to pay for somebody who's not prepared to walk around the block and think they have the right to, park on the pavement.
Maria, how do you think it should work? Do you think this needs to be a national ban on pavement parking, or do you think it should be led by councils, so councils decide area by area where you're allowed to park?
I think it should be a mix. I think what we should do is have a blanket ban on pavement parking, and then what councils can do is there's certain roads. I mean, there's one here in Exeter where the road is very narrow and the pavements are very wide. I'm not quite sure why, but it's perfectly safe to park on there. So, like a street like that would be fine. And I think one of the problems at the moment is legislation. It's just so unclear because there's this rule which says that you must not park on the pavement in London and Scotland, but you should not do it elsewhere. So it becomes a bit of a moral maze. And I think that, just to make that clearer about what people should do, because a lot of people sort of think, well, I can do it. And of course, traffic wardens can't do anything about it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get this on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were discussing the Gaza deal, and the mail mogs have come flying in. Mike says Donald Trump is hated by many on the left, and he is a bizarre character, but he's a master politician. He alone has improved the situation in the Middle East. The only blot on his horizon is intention to involve Blair in the post-war plan. Bad idea. Peter says Trump, despite the hate against him, will be seen historically as one of the greatest US presidents in history, especially if he forces Putin's hand, which he will. Are the Tories back in business? Kemi Badenoch took the Conservative Party back to its low-tax, pro-business roots yesterday by announcing the abolition of stamp duty on primary residences. She still bruised from the worst general election defeat in history. The party has a long way to go to return to its former glory, but this week's conference has succeeded in getting Mrs Badenoch back into the conversation and taking another step towards uniting the right, which is the best way to defeat the socialist. Well, let's go back to my pal, the historian and author Dr. Tessa Dunlop, and the journalist and broadcaster Linda Dooley. Linda, a lot of Conservatives were worried that we weren't seeing the real Kemi. She shone through yesterday.
I think there were glimmers. I think she did partially shine through, but she should be doing a lot more about this. I mean, we saw glimmers of her sense of humour. I do think she has a real sense of humour, and she has to show that, because although I agree with you, she won back the people in the hall, even though there weren't as many as there have been in past conferences. She won them back, and that's OK for inside the tent. But when you're talking about the viewer or the listener or indeed the voter, I think you have to show them a real personality. Now, we know who does that best, but that doesn't mean to say that you should be aping him. You should be developing your own personality, and that's what she should be doing. And she hasn't really clinched that yet. It's not enough just to talk about policies.
But first of all, she's talking to the hall.
Indeed.
That's a good step forward.
Indeed.
The question is she talking to anybody outside the hall?
No, I don't think... I mean, mostly people don't pay attention to these conferences anyway. I think they may be paying a bit more attention now because we live in perilous times, so they may need to assess the political landscape a lot better than they have in the past.
So I wonder if you think that Kemi is essentially waiting to catch the ball if other people make mistakes. That is to say, if Nigel trips up or if the economy falls, that she's setting out her stall to be the person who knows how to deal with things and is serious-minded and capable. And at that point, that's when she needs the electorate to listen.
Yeah, I think that those are quite big, broad brushstrokes. I noticed that, unlike the other two party leaders, she didn't mention Nigel Farage. I mean,
one passing mention.
Yeah, his beer or something. But generally, she stayed well away from giving him any oxygen. I want to like Kemi. I'm not a natural Conservative, but I want a strong female leader who's the right side of the barking right. And I forgive me, but she could be. And I loved it. I go up always when these leader speeches are on and they've just been edited down to their punchiest moments, which is the way way most people consume the speeches. I'm walking up the hill, and I did the same with Keir Starmer, and he gave me a line that I loved. It was about being a tolerant, diverse nation, and I felt, a little dewy-eyed moment. And Kemi did that for me when she said, it's not about the content of your character. So it is about the content of your character. It's not about the colour of your skin. And I was like, go, Kemi, own it. Yes, own the economy. I think stop always banging on about migration. It's going to be a tougher gig for her to own that for a whole bunch of reasons. It's Nigel Farage's park. Don't fight on it. I loved the fact that she lent into a slightly more caring conservative brand and then says, I'm going to give you a strong economy. That could work for her.
You see, I think her strategic position was to say, I'm a serious politician. I'm not going to indulge in shooting video at a train station to catch fare dodgers. I'm not going to do any of these gimmicky things. I'm going to be the serious one on the pitch. And to that extent, I think that she pushed Robert Jenrick to one side.
Absolutely.
And showed up. And I'm not saying he's wrong. I like the guy. I'm not saying he's wrong. But he's definitely trying to ape the kind of connection that Nigel Farage has. And she's made a decision not to do that.
And interestingly, friends who were at the conference says his little face fell during her speech. He felt unpicked by her success. He's, I think, overplayed his hand too soon. He's a bit of an Andy Burnham, burnt out too quickly.
Well, Andy Burnham certainly...
But he overreached.
Yes, he overreached. And Kemi has made her position secure, hasn't she? That people were beginning to mutter. It was interesting, the Times had a piece that was possibly written before her speech saying that people were plotting to get rid of her. I'd be very surprised if anyone's now doing that after
No,
that
I think
speech.
she's made her position secure, but I think she has to do more on two fronts. It is absolutely fine that she enhances her standing as a serious politician, but that doesn't mean to say that she can't inject her personality into it.
I loved that she laughed. That's the one thing she can trump Starmer on. He's always going to sound like a robot.
Yeah, that's
With
it.
Kemi,
He's not going
he's got a humour.
And she even laughed herself.
Yes.
Starmer can never do.
That's a gift.
And we were both at a Conservative event last week, which is why neither of us was here on State of the Nation. And going around the room, there's a lot of goodwill to Kemi within the Conservative Party. People are willing her to succeed.
Yeah, I think that's true. And our brilliant MP, Joy Morrissey,
is fantastic.
Totally behind her. And I think in my constituency, people are behind her. There may have been a few mutterings, this is right, at the grassroots in my area, but I think those have died down now. And she's done a very good job at dealing with that.
And the strength that I think the Tories show against reform is on the detail of policy.
Yes.
That you probably don't agree with the conclusion of Lord Wolfson's report on the ECHR, but it sets out all the problems. It doesn't just pretend there aren't any difficulties, and then makes it clear that there is a political choice if you want to make it. And I think that's very serious-minded, which the country quite likes.
Yeah, I mean, the ECHR decision did gut me. I don't want to hang around with Belarus and Russia, but it was, I think, predictable. At least they took their time. I think the other thing is, by shedding a few of the fringe crazies, ethno-Christians, or whatever they're calling it, the Krugers and the Nadine Dorries, actually, you keep the people who you know want to be there. And there's something very bonding about being smaller, but more loyal, more committed, and all facing in the same direction.
And you could be more agile. When you're smaller, you can be more agile. But it requires a lot of thought and a lot of self-discipline. We need to see that happening now.
I slightly think in the democracy you need as many votes as you can get. But never mind. Thank you very much to my panel. In a moment, another week, another scandal for the Reverend Starmer. But is this the one that could bowl the government over? Has he put diplomacy and sucking up to China ahead of Britain's security? And can he be trusted to keep the country safe?
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Some unsettled weather across eastern areas of Spain. Storm Alice is set to bring heavy showers and also some thunderstorms. Mostly dry and settled across Madeira and also Tenerife, but all eyes on eastern areas of Spain. Some intense thunderstorms here likely to bring some localised flooding. A few showers across parts of Sardinia on Friday, but elsewhere, once again, mostly dry and settled. Plenty of sunshine, and this theme will continue over into the weekend with warm temperatures too, widely in the mid to high 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It is a largely cloudy night out there with a few spots of rain in places, but there will be some cloud breaks and then increasingly so on Friday we'll see brighter skies develop. High pressure is moving in. That doesn't necessarily mean clear skies or indeed entirely dry weather. We do have a lot of thick cloud coming in at the same time, and that will continue to bring some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle, particularly for the north and west of Scotland, Northern Ireland, North West England and North Wales. Away from these areas, actually a few cloud breaks, particularly towards the northeast and also the southwest and in the southwest with light winds, temperatures dipping in a few shelter spots into the mid-single figures, a few mist and fog patches first thing. But the best of the sunshine during the morning will be eastern Scotland. Now for Shetland, outbreaks of rain from the word go and a few spots of rain continuing for the northwest Highlands, but mostly dry across the rest of Scotland and plenty of sunshine through the central belt as well as eastern parts. The cloud broken up well across northeast England as well, but actually for the Midlands, Wales as well, we've got a weak weather front lingering here, bringing thicker cloud and some drizzly rain from time to time. That's going to drift its way south, and that means that southern parts will be cloudier compared with Thursday. And after any mist and fog lifts across the southwest, I think we keep generally cloudy skies. Brighter skies will develop further north across much of Scotland, northern England and North Wales, and where we do get that brightness, temperatures reaching 17 or 18 Celsius. Then into the weekend, we start with, again, a few mist and fog patches, but plenty of dry and fine weather for many. Best of the sunshine this time, Wales, the Midlands, eastern England, eastern Scotland. Western Scotland turning increasingly grey and damp through the day, and into Sunday, well, it's very similar. High pressure holds on, a lot of cloud around, but some sunshine in places.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, we've just been talking about the Tory party conference and Kemi Badenoch, and the mailmogs have come storming in. And Bob says Kemi Badenoch has grown into the job as leader of the Tories. She can lead a Tory comeback, but the elephant in the room will always be the fact that they broke their promises in the past. Her ideas are great, but will they honour them if they win? And Robert says, hi Jacob, the problem for the Conservatives at the Conservative Party today is called Reform UK. Surely it's some mistake there, editor. Anyway, Camille says, sorry, no chance of a Tory revival with Kemi as leader. Oh dear, I wish to have to work harder. Anyway, it's a scandal week for the Prime Minister in recent months, but is this the one that could sink his premiership? Two former top civil servants have now publicly questioned the Prime Minister's decision after the collapse of a major Chinese espionage case. Sir Keir is accused of allowing Britain's national security to be compromised in favour of diplomatic relations with China. But despite the Prime Minister trying to blame the previous government's failure to label China as a threat, Sir Simon Case and Lord Sedwell, Lord Case as he now is, both former Cabinet Secretaries, said they have long warned of Chinese threats. So can the Prime Minister be trusted on the most important issue of all, national security? Well, I'm joined now by China commentator and author of Chinese Urban Revolution, Austin Williams. Mr. Williams, thank you very much for joining me. This is very serious, isn't it? The appearance of a government failure to assist the Crown Prosecution Service.
Well, I do think that there's a little bit over hype in some of this conversation, because obviously Starmer has got a lot to answer for, whether it's
the whole issue of trouncing the economy or trampling over civil liberties in general. And this story itself seems to have bypassed the essence of the story, which is of two individuals who seem to have been passing over information to a foreign state. And then the conversation then moved on to being one of talking about whether the Official Secrets Act itself mentioned enemy state, which it does, and China was not designated to be an enemy state. And therefore, we seem to be caught up in very much a technical, legalistic kind of definitional world, which obviously Starmer is very used to. This is his forte, playing with technical legal matters. But in some respects, it also seems as if this is now something to do with backroom public prosecution mandarins seem to be at the core of this conversation, almost marginalizing the Tory party, who actually were in government when these two were actually carrying out their espionage, and Starmer, who is now being seen to be slapped down for not actually prosecuting them. So something is going on behind the scenes, which is obviously doubly problematic in as much as they're not revealing much of the information. So we've been kept a little bit in the dark as to the reality of the conversation.
Yes, and it is important that the two cabinet secretaries and Sedwill, who of course was the security advisor himself as well, have come out and said that actually it was clear that China was designated as a threat under the Conservatives. There's the judgment in the Bulgarian case that seemed to lower the bar for definition of an enemy down to a country viewed as a security threat. And therefore this excuse that in 2023, when the crimes took place, China wasn't deemed in the 1911 Act's terms an enemy seems to me to be pretty spurious.
Well, it's game playing, isn't it? I mean, I think that some lawyer must be rubbing his hands with glee, having found that clause hidden away in the document. I mean, I suppose the other irony, which you may be aware of, I'm sure, is that the Official Secrets Act itself from 1911 was actually superseded in December 2023 with the National Security Act, and the crimes themselves, in very commas, were committed during 2023 prior to that kind of handover. So there's a kind of a strange something is happening which is not political, which is behind closed doors. But I do think that obviously the West, Britain, does deals, does trade, consorts with all kinds of regimes, whether it's Qatar, whether it's recognizing Palestine and Hamas. Which you wouldn't have thought would be necessarily a friendly state, all the way through to the European Union. We've been dealing with them for donkey's years. So I think that there's ways and ways and ways that we can actually recognise that our interests are served by doing deals with countries with which we may not invite them for dinner parties. But at the same time, I think there's important kind of geopolitical issues which maybe take preference over that. So I don't necessarily designate China as an enemy state myself. But I mean, who am I? But I think that ideologically, China poses as much a threat to the West and Western democratic ways of life as Islamism does. However, whereas Islamism wants to destroy the Western way of life, so China is just waiting for it to implode. So I think it's much more of a conversation about what is the sanctity of democracy, where is the West's sense of purpose and confidence that is being kind of undermined here by this entire conversation.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Williams, for joining me. And it's an extremely interesting conundrum. So, is Britain heading for an AI-centred economic doomsday? The Bank of England warns the surge in artificial intelligence stocks could mirror the dot-com crash of 2000, and optimism is starting to suffer. Should we be worried, or is this just the price of progress?
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We've just been talking about China, and some more mail mogs have come in, which is great. Lots of mail mogs today, so thank you. Mary says, I think it's fair to say that you cannot trust Starmer with anything. He's lied so often, I'm not even sure if his father really was a toolmaker and his mother a nurse. It's remarkable that he brought Boris Johnson down for lying. And another viewer says, sorry, no chance. Why, we don't want to hear that. That's not about China. No chance for Tory revival with Kemi. Bah humbug. Anyway, you've got to get your mail mogs in earlier for the right section. Is another economic doomsday about to hit us all? The Bank of England is drawing comparisons between the increase in AI stocks in the market to the dot-com boom that ended really in sort of March 2000, risking a similar crash as optimism in artificial intelligence values begin to drop. Jamie Dimon, the head of JP Morgan, who thinks people should get back in the offices to work, has said he is far more worried than others about a stock market fall and thinks some people will lose money in AI. So should we be worried or should we embrace the world's evolving technology? So let me go to my panel, the historian and author, Dr. Tessa Dunlop, and the journalist and broadcaster, Linda Dubley. Tessa, this often happens, doesn't it, that a new technology comes along. It happened with motor cars in the 20s and with radios.
It happened with tulips in the 70s.
It happened. You're absolutely right. The tulip mania is one of the first financial crises and is arguably one of the causes of the English Civil War because of the effect it has on financial markets. And now you've got AI. Yeah. AI is clearly going to be very important, but are the valuations sensible?
Well, just as we all still buy tulips and we all still drive cars and we all now use the internet 20 years after the dot-com bubble, clearly AI will be the future. But there's this sort of over-eager spike. You understand it much better than I do, Jacob, because you were guddling around at the time of the dot-com crash and working out whether actually something was Emperor's New Clothes or had long-term grist. And the problem is, if this crashes, and it looks like 30% unprecedented levels of investment have got into 5 top companies, one of whom's owned by Larry Ellison, who's now the richest man in the world, apparently overtaken Elon Musk. So these are crazy sums of money. The problem is, if it all does go Pete Tong tomorrow, it affects the man and woman on the street, and that's what concerns me, because you can link the dots between the dot-com crash and then 2008, and we're still swamping around. We've never picked back up fully, have we?
And Tessa's right, isn't she? Because when a bubble is going on, people get involved in it. They borrow, they invest in the stocks, their asset then falls because they buy it near the peak, and they've still got the debt they've got to pay back. Isaac Newton, of all people, got caught out by the South Sea bubble with the tulip mania that Tessa mentioned. A tulip bulb could be as valuable as your house. It was
crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, because the people who make the money, as you rightly point out, are the people that go in at the beginning. It rises, and then a lot of people think, oh, that's a way to make money, and unfortunately it's not. Now, what we could be talking about here is maybe not a crash, but we would be talking about a correction. Is that the case, that there would be a correction?
I doubt it. I think you either get a crash or you get continued momentum. That markets don't tend to... Mature markets have corrections. So you might have a correction if motor companies had gone up to a PE of 15 times, they might come back down to a PE of 12. But when you've got these things that are on multiples of sales and multiples of future years' sales, they don't go down a bit. Confidence just disappears.
So we could be OK, but Jamie Dimon this morning, he's over here, isn't he, to oversee a campus for JP Morgan down in Bournemouth. But he has said he is much more concerned than other bank chiefs in America.
And does this particularly hit Britain? Are we particularly exposed to investment and overinvestment in AI?
Well, a lot of our investments are in the United States, and that's where they will be in AI.
So we'll catch a cold.
The UK stock market has not been doing very well recently and hasn't had many new issues coming on. So directly, the FTSE isn't particularly exposed to AI. It's more exposed to oil and banks and so on, but that what happens in the US can have a very profound effect on UK investors.
But if you listen to the Jamie Dimon interview, I think there's other factors that he's concerned about. I think that he is concerned about Trump, who today has a massive success, you know, geopolitical success, but he is inconsistent, and that does worry the finance sector.
The tariffs have dampened the global markets. There's no getting away from that. I mean, I know you love Trump, but you surely don't agree.
I don't like tariffs.
You don't like tariffs.
But also, I think he is concerned about the Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell in America. I think that, you know, it depends whether Trump pulls back from that position, because that's quite a worrying development, I think, his ability to try and, you know, persuade or coerce.
Do you know, I'm more pro-Trump on that, because I don't think central banks are that great. I don't think they've done a good job in recent years. I think the Bank of England's been utterly useless. And so I don't think that independent central banking is the panacea for economic ills. Indeed, I think some of our problems here are that the Bank of England's utterly bungled monetary policy. It worries people. It worries markets.
And it's about perception.
And it's about perception. And in the 1830s, there was a great battle between the Bank of the United States and the then President of the United States, and it did lead to a deep decline because Mr. Biddle, he was called, the man who ran the Bank of the United States, hated the President, and he deliberately destroyed the economy out of spite. So you're absolutely right that it does create an uncertainty, and Dimon knows what he's talking about.
I know. I was very surprised when I heard that this morning.
My worry is, on top of everything, you've got the accumulative problems of COVID, and am I allowed to say even Brexit and the Ukraine war and the tariff wars? Then you get this burst, this AI bubble burst, in a way that we had the elasticity to manage it or absorb it a bit 20 years ago. We don't now. Where would it leave Rachel Reeves' ceiling and her rules?
Well, we've spent all the money. That's the problem. What is it Margaret Thatcher said about socialists? Ultimately, you run out of other people's money.
Run out of other people's money. Exactly right.
Thank you to my formidably forthright panel. Today marks the feast of Cardinal St John Henry Newman, one of England's greatest theologians, writers and men of faith. Born in London in 1801, St John Henry Newman's journey from Anglican cleric to Catholic cardinal reshaped England's spirituality. His writings championed the harmony of faith and reason, the importance of conscience, and the call to seek truth above all else. In a time when Britain is struggling with questions of identity, belief and morality, St John Henry Newman's life reminds us that integrity of thought, courage and faith are invaluable. And if you want, you can go to the Brompton Oratory for the Old Rite Mass every morning at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock on Sundays. Anyway, that's all from me. I'm going to be heading off to Somerset. Up next, it's the one and only Patrick Christys. Patrick, what's on your programme this evening?
Jacob, huge breaking news in the last 2 minutes about this China spy scandal, actually. Reported in the Daily Telegraph, Jonathan Powell, the head of national security, suppressed a major Whitehall investigation into Chinese spying after lobbying from the Treasury. They felt that it could damage trade and investment links. It's a huge development in this China spy case. We're going to be giving you all of the detail. If Sir Keir Starmer is found to have lied about this, then he will, in my view, have to go. Stay tuned.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It is a largely cloudy night out there with a few spots of rain in places, but there will be some cloud breaks and then increasingly so on Friday. We'll see brighter skies develop. High pressure is moving in. That doesn't necessarily mean clear skies or indeed entirely dry weather. We do have a lot of thick cloud coming in at the same time, and that will continue to bring some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle, particularly for the north and west of Scotland, Northern Ireland, North West England and North Wales. Away from these areas, actually, a few cloud breaks, particularly towards the northeast and also the southwest and in the southwest with light winds, temperatures dipping in a few shelter spots into the mid-single figures, a few mist and fog patches first thing. But the best of the sunshine during the morning will be eastern Scotland. Now for Shetland, outbreaks of rain from the word go and a few spots of rain continuing for the northwest Highlands, but mostly dry across the rest of Scotland and plenty of sunshine through the central belt as well as eastern parts. The cloud broken up well across northeast England as well, but actually for the Midlands, Wales as well, we've got a weak weather front lingering here, bringing thicker cloud and some drizzly rain from time to time. That's going to drift its way south, and that means that southern parts will be cloudier compared with Thursday. And after any mist and fog lifts across the southwest, I think we keep generally cloudy skies. Brighter skies will develop further north across much of Scotland, northern England and North Wales, and where we do get that brightness, temperatures reaching 17 or 18 Celsius. Then into the weekend, we start with, again, a few mist and fog patches, but plenty of dry and fine weather for many. Best of the sunshine this time, Wales, the Midlands, eastern England, eastern Scotland. Western Scotland turning increasingly grey and damp through the day, and into Sunday, well, it's very similar. High pressure holds on, a lot of cloud around, but some sunshine in places.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
You could bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. And if that wasn't enough, you'll also get to drive away in this brand new motorhome. This brand new 2025 Benamar Primero could be yours. It comes with all the mod cons you'd expect from a vehicle worth over £74,000 and comfortably sleeps 4 people. This prize package is worth over £104,000. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health, whatever happens in